I built and sold 3 different e-commerce businesses all in my 20s. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the 7 steps that I used in order to do it. So if you ever want to sell a business of your own, or even if you're just getting started, these are things that I wish I knew from the very beginning, because it ultimately would have made my journey a lot easier and saved me years of painful trial and error, and ultimately cost me tens of thousands of dollars in profit. And be sure to watch every one of these steps in order, because each one of these comes from a painful lesson that I learned the hard way, so that hopefully you won't have to do the same. Now, before we jump in, let me share exactly what the businesses were that we sold so that you have context for all the lessons we're about to cover. First up, we have Yoga Stay, which was a Shopify print-on-demand brand in the yoga niche, where we sold yoga apparel and mats and workout equipment. We started this company back in 2020 and exited from it in 2022, just after about 2 years of running it. Then the second brand was a company called History Tees, which, very similar to Yoga Stay, was a print-on-demand brand started in the history niche, selling history-themed apparel and sarcastic and funny jokes. And then finally, we had a portfolio of brands, 4 of them in total, that were in print-on-demand, 3PL, and dropshipping. So every different e-commerce business model. And throughout this video, I'm going to be commenting on which out of all of the business models I believe is the best for a complete beginner who's just getting started. We're going to dive into each one of these brands in further detail later on in the video, but let's get started with step 1, which is picking a market and staying in your lane. One of the biggest mistakes that I made starting out was that I was pivoting between business models pretty much every month because I had no confidence in my skills or in my own ability to basically build a business, which made sense because when I was starting out, I honestly had no skills. But I shouldn't have let that lack of confidence cause me to keep pivoting, because it ended up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I was shooting myself in the foot by changing, and I wasn't allowing myself to build up the skills necessary. And so even though the portfolio that we ended up selling was in dropshipping, 3PL, and print on demand, if I could go back in time, I really wish that I would have just stayed with one thing and gotten really good at it. Because quite honestly, you only need one business in order to sell. And it is way easier selling one really profitable, fast-growing business than it is selling a collection of little pieces put together. And you can think of it like picking a sport. Like if you're an athlete starting off in middle school or high school, you don't want to be pivoting between basketball to tennis to golf if your goal is to become a professional athlete. And that's exactly what selling a business is. You're becoming a professional business owner. And so in order to do that, you want to get really good at your craft in one specific area. And it's important to note that this can be literally anything. Like we're talking about e-commerce, but this can be any type of business. And within that business model, picking one specific model to get exceptionally good at. However, this is only valuable when you pick a lane that allows you to build a real asset in. And that's what step 2 is all about, which is building to at least $200,000 to $300,000 a year in annual net profit, which starting out as a complete beginner, I know sounds like a long shot, but hear me out on this, because with that goal in mind, even when it does seem unreachable and like I'm just trying to get my very first sale here, like 2 to 300K in profit, it's totally okay. You don't have to be shooting for that. This is just where we want to go down the road from here. Because when I started out, I had no idea like what creates a sellable business, like how much profit does it need to have. And while the exit multiples range based on the profit that you're bringing in each year, in my experience, you're able to get a decent sized exit off of 2 to 300K in annual net profit. And the fastest way to build something to 2 to 300K in annual profit is the 1-1-1 rule, which means one product type, one traffic source, one audience. And if you're curious to see exactly how we did this with History Tees, then you can click the link down below and grab the free case study inside of our We Scale free community, where I break down exactly how we took History Tees from zero to over $3.5 million in sales and then ultimately exited from that company. And a big mistake that you can avoid here is that more brands actually just equals more problems. I used to think, if one brand is good, 4 brands will be 4 times as good. Logic is sound, the complete opposite. It actually meant 4 times the problems, 4 times the costs, and 4 times less profit. But having profit is just one piece of the equation, and it's honestly useless if we don't have step 3, which is getting your business organized. And when I was running my first brands, it was an absolute crapshoot. Nothing was organized. I had no folders or systems or anything. It was pretty much I sat down and worked on my laptop each day and we would just see what happens. But that is not something that a buyer wants to acquire. And one of the misconceptions I had going into this is that as long as a business is making profit, then somebody will buy it. But in reality, the exact opposite is true, is that yes, you need to be making profit, but we also need to be putting ourselves in the shoes of the potential buyers and see like a potential future for the business that is exciting for somebody to invest a pretty sizable amount of money with us. So if you yourself are not able to look at your business as an outsider and see a clear path forward, then it's not that sellable. It's not a sellable asset. And so a big part of this comes down to the organization and the systems that you have inside the business. And I overcomplicated the crap out of this for a long, long time. And the main things that you need to have in your business are your three primary systems. Number one is your system for product development. And if you're in print on demand, for example, where we focus the majority of our time and energy, what we help people with inside of WeScale University, that just comes down to a very simple Trello board where you have your design columns of your ideas, your backlog, and then the stages that they're at. You don't need anything fancier than that, but just a consistent Trello board that you're referring back to. Second, you need your financial systems, which the simplest version of this is just get started with a Google Sheet and grab the P&L template that we have inside the free community and just fill it out on a daily basis. And then third is you need your SOPs for your team, which comes down to how you're handling your customer service tickets. What do you do when there's a refund request? How do you launch new products on your site? All of these things that as you're running your business, you start to do them yourself over time and you know it, but that's not really helpful when it comes to building a sellable asset. A sellable asset means that everything that's in your mind is down on paper and documented somewhere. So selling a business with no systems is like trying to sell a car that has no service record and just busted dashboards. You need to have those clear optics into exactly where the business has been in the past, how it got there, and how it's going to continue its operations into the future after you have left. And even if you're not trying to sell your business right now, you should always be operating it as if you are. But none of this matters if you don't pick the right time to sell, which is step number 4, when to sell. Most people mess this up because they either sell too early or too late. In my case, I was somewhere in between, not the right time. But basically, the best time to be selling a business is when you have systems in place, so there's no longer key man risk, meaning that when you step out of the business, it's just going to fall apart at the seams. 2, you are showing a positive growth rate or trajectory. So if you're showing 0% growth year over year, that's not a very exciting business for somebody to be buying. Worse yet, if you're showing declining sales, going down 15, 20%, that's a very hard business to sell. But if you're going the opposite direction, you're showing 15 to 20% growth year over year, that's a pretty exciting spot to be in. And these numbers are all relative. In some industries, it's standard that they want to be seeing 30 to 40%. But in general, from my experience, 15 to 20% year over year growth is a pretty healthy time to be selling the business. And so you can kind of think of it like surfing. You want to catch the wave at exactly the right time and time when you're going to market at the peak of the wave. Because anything before or after that, you're going to get a lower multiple than you could probably get going at the right time. Then once you know that you have picked the right business model, you've got your systems in place, you know the right timing. Next up is deciding how you want to sell the business. And I personally made a lot of mistakes with this. I tried out all of them. There's a couple of main options. You can either go to investment bankers, which are for larger businesses like 2 to 3 million, and EBITDA, which EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. So if your business is doing $2 to $3 million over the past 12 months, investment bankers. If you're short of that, then going the broker route can make sense. And there's lots of options out there. Or you can self-list, like on a marketplace or an exchange. Like Shopify used to have Shopify Marketplace, which has now been closed down. Or you can go the fourth option, which is going to an aggregator or a company like OpenStore, which is what we did. And so the simplest way to think about this is it's basically the same as when you're selling a house. You can either do it for sale by owner, or you can go through a broker. And there's pros and cons to each. Obviously, if you're going to sell by yourself, it's a lot more work, not as likely to actually find a potential buyer. But also, if and when you do, you save the commission that you would have been paying to the broker. But on the flip side, if you go through a broker, you're paying a commission, and it completely ranges depending on the broker and the size of the deal. But it can be anywhere from 5 to 10, upwards of 15%. And the benefit of doing that is that they have a book of buyers that they've either done deals with in the past or that they know are in the market for acquiring a business. So then the moment that you decide to list your business for sale, then they are basically tapping their entire list of potential buyers and ideally speeding up the process that much faster. But honestly, no matter how you are finding your buyers, I recommend experimenting with each of them. But once you do find one, step 6 is where things get really important. And that is talking with the buyers and negotiating your terms. This is where the first time I did a deal, I was very hesitant because I wasn't sure what was the right thing to say, what wasn't, and ultimately how I should be approaching it. But now I realize that the best way to approach conversations with the buyer is to, number one, protect yourself, get them to sign NDAs prior to disclosing any sensitive information about your business. But then after that's done, just being open and authentic with the buyer about the business and its current state. Because the thing that I realized about halfway through selling our first business is that it really comes down to the people that are on the other side of the deal. And if you're able to build a good relationship with them, build good rapport, then good things can happen on both sides. And the reason that this is the best policy is, number one, it's just less stressful and it's the ethical thing to do. But two, you're going to go into due diligence later on, assuming things go well. And at that point, all of your dirty laundry is going to be out to air for everybody to see anyway. So they're going to find out no matter what there is about the business. So you might as well be open and honest up front and let them know everything that there is to see. And another important point here is the speed at which we are communicating with the potential buyers. So we list with either ourselves as a self-listed seller, or we go through a broker. Then we get them to sign an NDA. And if they're not willing to sign an NDA, then I would just recommend moving on. But once you start communicating with them, it's important that we are extremely timely in that we strike while the iron's hot. We never leave a buyer waiting for information or answers to their questions. It should be our top priority getting back to them as quickly as possible. And then assuming we answer all their questions to their satisfaction, then they will make an offer. And an offer comes in the form of an LOI, which stands for letter of intent. And that letter of intent is a non-contractually binding document that basically says that they have an intention to acquire the business pending all due diligence items are completed to their satisfaction. Now, I've had lots of LOIs that come through and then fall through either because the buyer turned out to not be who they said they were, or two, they just got tired and weren't interested in the deal anymore. Hence the strike while the iron's hot thing. And then once you receive your LOI, then you go into step 7, which is your due diligence and closing. And here in due diligence, I was woefully underprepared the first time we did this because I had no idea what to expect. Now I can share that what you need to have prepared is literally everything. Anything that the business has ever touched, you need to have ready and at your fingertips. And I'll give you the quick hit things. You need to have a P&L that's based on trailing 12 month, or actually for the whole length of the business. The multiple is based off of the trailing 12 months, but it needs to be on a accrual basis of accounting, which if you don't know what that is, just Google it or ChatGPT, but it has to be on accrual if you're an e-commerce business. Second, if you're a Shopify business, you need to have clear breakdowns of your customer cohorts, your lifetime value, your traffic channels. For example, what percentage of your sales is coming from Facebook? What percentage of your sales is coming from Google? What percentage is from email? And side note, that buyers are by far the most interested in seeing how much of your revenue comes from your repeat customers, which is back to the earlier point, building a business that is a real asset. We want to make sure that we are building a business that gets people to come back and buy again and again. Then assuming that you were upfront and open about literally everything in your initial conversations, then there's really no reason that anything should change during due diligence. But if the buyer does find something that even, with your best of intentions wasn't what the buyer was expecting, then there is a possibility that before they present you with an official offer and a contract, that they will try to retrade on the deal based on whatever it is that they found during due diligence. And then when they give you the final offer can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. It can come in the form of cash at close. It can come in the form of an earnout, or it can come in the form of stock options and like a acqui-hire type situation. I personally had experience with the first two where we received a percentage of our deal at cash at close and then another percentage after a 1 to 2 month transitionary period. And bonus step 8 is the transition period. And this is when after you have closed the deal with the new buyer, the money has hit your account and you begin the transition process, handing over the assets and getting the new team up to speed on how things operate, this is a great opportunity for you to make sure that this deal is a win-win on both sides. And it's my personal belief that even though we've closed the deal and, it's technically signed and sealed, it is our responsibility as the seller to make sure we do absolutely everything in our power to make sure that we set the buyer up for success. For one of many reasons, being that it's the ethical thing to do, to make sure that they get the best of both worlds. Two, to make sure that any of our team who is staying on as part of the transition, that they are in a good situation and that there's a high likelihood of them being able to stay on with the company. And three, you worked really hard on the brand and you want to see it not just stay the same, but ultimately go on and flourish and rise to the goals of whatever the buyer is trying to do with the brand. And finally, all of this said and done, the fastest way to actually sell a business comes down to building a real business worth selling that people actually want and that you yourself would be excited about buying. And if you start with that, and if you follow the principles that we covered in this video, then even if your goal is to sell at some point in the distant future, in the short to medium term, these principles will be a good guiding force to helping you build a real profitable brand. And if you do decide to exit at some point down the road, you'll be well ready when that day comes. And if you want to learn more about how we built these businesses in extreme detail, we have a free 31-hour course that you can watch step by step to see exactly how we built brands just like History Tees and Yoga Stay from zero to multiple seven figures and ultimately exited from them. If you like these kind of videos, comment down below to let me know what you want to hear more of. And other than that, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.